It's wonderful to be joined by Professor Walter Block of Loyola University once again. Last time he was on the show, we were also joined by Alan Buterman. We discussed the classical liberal case for Israel. Today, we're discussing his classic work of economics, Defending the Undefendable, with the subtitle The Pimp, Prostitute, Scab, Slumlord, Libeler, Moneylender, and Other Scapegoats in the Rogues Gallery of American Society. The subtitle itself reminds me of that monologue in the Blazing Saddles movie with the character, the main villain, Hedley Lamar, and then he ends with and also the Methodist. So, a very cheeky subtitle there. So, Walter, welcome to the show. How are you?
You're very kind to have me again. I'm fine, and you look in good shape. So it's great to be back with you again.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to eat and sleep normally, so to speak. And of course, this conversation is hopefully the first in a series of conversations on defending the undefendable, because as Walter let me know, this book also spawned two sequels, Defending the Undefendable 2 and 3. So I hope to get into that in the coming months. So I guess as a throwback to our previous conversation about the classical liberal case for Israel, we now know the results of the US presidential election. So, how do you suppose the new Trump term will affect or impact US-Israel relations?
Well, Biden and Harris have been sort of fair weather friends of Israel, um, continually telling them to have a pause or a ceasefire or be nicer to the Gazans. And not conquer them, but just sort of, I don't know, deal with them in a nice way. But these are not nice people. They have hostages. They engage in genocide, which I define as killing women and children purposefully. And they're just a very bad lot. And Biden and Harris are trying to sort of help Israel with the Iron Dome and to stop incoming missiles, but they don't want Israel to conquer its enemies. Who are its enemies? Mainly Iran and Iranian proxies such as Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, and other terrorist groups like that. Now, I think that Donald Trump will be very different. I think that he will allow Israel to conquer its enemies, which I think they well deserve to be conquered because they keep initiating wars. Israel wants peace. They talk about what is it, a two-state solution? Well, we had a two-state solution. Gaza, for all intents and purposes, was a sovereign country. Israel, the Israeli government compelled all the Jewish people to leave Gaza in 2005. And then there was a little civil war between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. And Hamas won. And ever since 2007, Hamas has had a state. Well, what did they do with that state? Did they build hotels? No. Did they build desalination plants? No. Did they build factories? No. They built armaments and tunnels out from which the Hamas would jump out and kill Israelis. So I hope and expect that Donald Trump will take a more reasonable, more ethical position. And Israel is an ally of the United States, and he will supply them with military material, and they will conquer. The latest thing was when Israel was attacking Iran, Biden was saying, "Don't go near their nuclear capabilities." What? Don't go near their capable abilities? Whereas Donald said, "That's the first thing you attack." So I expect much better from Donald in behalf of Israel than we got from Biden Harris.
Understood. So I'm sure you've heard of the appointments that he has selected, and one of the wild cards amongst many in the Rogues Gallery, so to speak, to pay homage to Your subtitle of your book is Elon Musk. Um, so, to what extent do you believe that Musk's presence in the upcoming Trump administration will help or hinder the libertarian cause?
Oh, I think Musk is magnificent. And not only has Donald appointed Musk, this new division of governmental efficiency, he's also working with Ron Paul. And you can't get more libertarian than Ron Paul. Musk takes second place in that sweepstakes. Musk is very good. Ron Paul is magnificent. And between the two of them, I think that the waste in the U.S. government will be reduced, and hopefully then taxes will be reduced, and it'll become more libertarian. So I'm very optimistic about this. And by the way, I'm a libertarian. And I had a little bit of a conflict because I also support the Libertarian Party. So in my publications before the election, what I said is, look, open letter to libertarians. I forget what I called it. It was something like that. And I said, look, if you're in California, vote for the Libertarian Party because Donald is going to get slaughtered in California. And even if you vote for him, you're not going to help him. He's going to lose California. On the other hand, if you are in Florida or Texas, again, vote for the Libertarian because now Donald doesn't need your vote. He's going to win big, and the extra 2 or 3% that libertarians sometimes possess will not help. However, if you're in a purple state like Pennsylvania or Georgia or Wisconsin, where it's going to be a close election, then forget about the Libertarian Party, then vote for Donald. Because Donald might well need your vote. It turned out he didn't, but I couldn't know that before. Donald won without much, unless people, unless libertarians took my advice. So what I was trying to do is straddle two goals: one, support of Donald, and two, support of the Libertarian Party. Now, I'm not a big fan of Chase Oliver, the presidential candidate, but he is upholding the banner of libertarianism. So the libertarian in me sort of feels I have to support him, and certainly the Libertarian Party. So that's the way I try to help Donald win, by focusing libertarian votes in the purple states against the Libertarian Party, paradoxically, to promote liberty and in favor of Donald.
I see. Well, one more Trump-related question before we get to your book. I understand that Donald Trump has stake a claim, or at least stake his position on trade and immigration, which can be counter or contrary to the libertarian position. So he's much more protectionist in his rhetoric now, and he's much more anti-immigration in his rhetoric now. So, having voted for him, and I suppose what can libertarians do when Trump like delivers on his agenda?
Well, those are two areas where libertarians have little difficulty with Donald. Certainly on tariffs. I mean, Donald said that tariff is the best word in the English language, or the most beautiful word in the English language. That this is just wrong. We know that voluntary trade not usually necessarily benefits both parties, at least ex ante. Chong, is that the right way to say your name? Chong?
Yeah, Chum, Chum.
Chong?
Yeah.
You have a nice white shirt. I have a lousy white shirt. You have a nice white shirt, and you paid, I don't know, $20 for it. I know, as an Austrian economist, I can deduce that at the time you bought that shirt, you value the shirt more than $20. Now, you might not have liked the shirt at all, but there was this pretty girl selling the shirt, and you thought you'd get a date with her if you bought the shirt. I don't know what about the shirt attracted you, but something about that shirt attracted you, more than $20 worth, and you gained. And the guy who sold you that shirt, or the gal who sold you that shirt, probably had dozens of them, was dying to get rid of them. And she or he valued it at $5 and made a $15 profit. And you valued it at, I don't know, 25, and you made a $5 profit. So every time there's a trade, necessarily both parties gain ex ante in the sense of anticipation. Ex post, who knows? But usually you don't regret buying a shirt. Well, now I'm going to put up a tariff and I'm going to make it more difficult for you to buy that shirt. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a different country or in the same country, the politicization doesn't matter. Now, look, if tariffs were so good, why should we only have tariffs for foreign countries? I'm in Louisiana. Why shouldn't we have a tariff against Montana? Montana has beef and Iowa has corn, and we don't have that much beef and corn. Maybe we should have a tariff against them. But wait, I'm in New Orleans. Maybe we should have a tariff against those people in Baton Rouge. Why should we import stuff from Baton Rouge when we could produce it ourselves here in New Orleans? But wait, I'm in the Garden District, uptown. And maybe we should have a tariff against the downtown people. But wait, I'm on a city block, and why should we import anything into this city block? We should produce everything we want in this city block. You see where I'm going with this? This is crazy. Trade is mutually beneficial in the ex ante sense. Now, we're not talking about military material. We're just talking about, I don't know, chickens and eggs and meat and corn and stuff like that. And Donald wants to have tariffs on there. We libertarians would certainly disagree with him on that.
Understood.
On the other hand, Biden and Harris were worse on everything practically. So I still favor Donald over Biden by a long shot, or Biden and Harris. Now, with regard to immigration, that's a very, very tough issue. A lot of libertarians, like Murray Rothbard and Hans Hoppe, leading libertarians, say, look, there are laws, and the laws are that there's such a thing as legal immigration. And for legal immigration, we want people like scientists and doctors and entrepreneurs who have $1 million and can set up a company and employ people. But we don't want people who are going to go on welfare. And if you want to come to the United States, sure, come on, apply, and we'll let you know if you're in or not. That would be maybe the mainstream libertarian view. I'm not sure. On the other hand, there are open borders libertarians, and I'm one of them. And my view is, look, suppose somebody comes from Mars, a person from Mars, and he lands in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Wyoming. And he lands on 100 acres that have never been touched by human beings or by human feet, just virgin territory. And he starts homesteading. He puts in a crop. He has a cow, and he domesticates this or that. And now somebody from ICE comes along and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just homesteading this virgin territory." And the ICE guy says, "Well, it's against the law. You can't do that. You have to go back to Mars." And my question as a libertarian is, what libertarian law did he violate? Oh, yes, he violated U.S. law. I understand that. But what libertarian law did he violate? And my answer is he didn't violate any libertarian law. So the libertarian would say, leave him alone. Now, it's true, most immigrants aren't going to the middle of Wyoming in the mountains. They're going to the cities. But I'm trying to make a principle here, a principled point. So that would be the point in favor of open immigration. Boy, at this rate, we're never going to get to the book, but we can always get to the book next time. But we're having fun, and we're hopefully promoting liberty, so I'll keep going.
All right. Yeah.
Now, what's the argument against open borders? The argument against open borders is that there are some immigrants, they see a woman in a miniskirt, and they feel that, well, she's just asking to be raped. And we don't want immigrants like that. And then there are immigrants that go on welfare, and we don't want immigrants like that. And there might be Martians, a quadrillion of them, or a quintillion, or a septillion of them. They're all good guys, none of them with miniskirts or anything like that. But we don't want a quintillion or a novillion Martians. How do we keep them out and not jettison libertarian theory? See, that's my problem with Murray Rothbard and Hans Hoppe. They are so fixated on protecting us that they're willing to jettison libertarian theory in favor of protecting us against criminals and rapists and murderers. So how do we have our cake and eat it? How can we keep libertarian theory and also protect ourselves against bad guys and too many people? The answer is privatize every square inch of the country. Privatize the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, privatize everything. And privatize the roads and privatize the parks and privatize everything. And now, if a Martian or a bad guy comes here, we can now say, you can't stay here because you're trespassing. Now, the argument against that, it gets a little convoluted, but I'm sure you're following me. The argument against that is that there is certain territory that is called submarginal land. Submarginal land is stuff in the middle of Alaska or in the middle of Wyoming in the Rocky Mountains. Nobody wants it because it costs more to homestead it than it's worth. So what we'd have to do is have some sort of charitable organization. Maybe Bill Gates would contribute, and we would privatize that land just so that no immigrants can come there. So that would be my explanation, my defense of open borders, because if we don't have open borders, we're jettisoning libertarian theory because of this Martian example. And this way we can have our cake and eat it. We can be protected against bad guys and too many people if we privatize every square inch of the country. And my motto is, if it moves, privatize it. If it doesn't move, privatize it. And since everything either moves or doesn't move, you privatize everything. And now we have a solution to the immigration crisis. So, yes, I am a little unhappy with Donald on the immigration because he's no open borders person. He's going to build a big wall. And I'm certainly opposed to his view on tariffs. I'm for free trade. But apart from that, the U.S. election is not one of perfection. Ron Paul wasn't running. Not that even he is perfect. Nobody's perfect. Not even me, and I assume you. Nobody's perfect. We're the mistake-making animal. We all make errors. But the idea is you pick the least bad, and Donald Trump, by a long, long measure, was the least bad. So I'm happy to support him, even though I don't agree with him on 100% of all the issues.
Understood. Okay. Well, let's finally get into the book. And I think I'm
Okay.
happy to discuss, liberty and freedom with you anytime. Um, so the thesis of the book is that there are a number of people who engage in professions or behaviors that mainstream society would uh, roll its eyes at, would call immoral, and the state would be tempted to make them illegal. And your view, and I'm sure this is your view in the other defending the undefendable books with more and more scapegoats of our society, is that they are not only not harmful but beneficial to our economy. I hope I got that thesis of yours correct. Um, I, I should like to begin with one particular example since we were discussing shirt. Um, I certainly like my shirt, and you like yours. Um, they, but what if there was a shortage of shirts brought about by, say, one of Trump's error, and this shirt that I'm wearing happens to be very rare, and as such, the cost that the shirt merchant is selling is um, a few 100% more than the production cost. And would that be still be an example of voluntary trade if I choose to buy it, reluctantly? Of course, words like price gouging or scalping is abound. Um, but there are other goods too, like say medicine, that is much more important than shirt that can be subject to this kind of scalping. I'm sure you've heard of the case of this guy named Martin Shkreli, who jacked up the price of life-saving AIDS medicine to a few hundred or maybe even 1,000%, and he's obviously one of the scapegoats that you mentioned. So tell me, in what way does this kind of behavior benefit the economy and society?
Well, that's a rough one, and it's good that we don't toss softballs at each other. We try to take the rough cases because if the theory can only work for easy cases, it's not that good of a theory. I mean, if I say, well, we should privatize the post office, you know, okay, I'm in favor of privatizing the post office, but it's hardly a stretch. And even a lot of people who are not libertarians might say, well, that's an interesting point. Maybe we should, and they're willing to listen. But if you talk about the tougher cases, then you lose a lot of people, and that's where we have to make our stand. So I congratulate you for not throwing a softball at me, but taking a very tough case. The usual case is insulin for diabetes. And if you don't have insulin, you're going to die. At the very least, you're going to be in dire straits. And if the price of insulin is very high, it's going to be very bad. I'm now going to cure cancer. I have I just invented the cure for cancer. And I'll tell you what it is. You take a little spaghetti and you take a little sugar and you take a little ketchup and you take a little mustard and you put in some egg whites and you stir it up and that cures cancer. But don't tell anybody. I'm being a little silly here. What am I going to do if I'm going to maximize my revenue? And by the way, the cost of this is practically zero because I just mentioned stuff that's in my kitchen and that's in your kitchen. But you don't know, but nobody knows about the formula. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, if I want to maximize my revenues, I'm going to sell it for, I don't know, $1 million per pill. And let's say I sell it in the form of a pill. Don't ask how I concoct a pill, but I put all this stuff into a pill, and I sell it for $1 million, and it's a guarantee to cure cancer. And all you need is one pill. And I sell it for $1 million, and guess who can buy it for $1 million? Not you or I, but very rich people. And now all the rich people have bought it, and now I lower the price to $500,000 and semi-rich people can buy it. And now I lower it to 100,000, and now I lower it down to 10,000, and then eventually, I mean, the thing costs what, 5 cents or 10 cents or something like that. Eventually, I'll sell it for $1. Now a dollar, I can still make a little profit, 95 cents on the pill. But the point is that if I'm allowed to do this, I will be a boon to society because I can make these pills real quick, and it's not going to take that long before I get the price down to $5 or $10 or $1, and I'm going to make a ton of money. But if the government comes along and says, well, that's price gouging, you can't do that. That's profiteering, right? I mean, initially I'm selling it for $1 million and it cost me 5 cents to produce it, or it cost me $1 or something like that. I'm profiteering, I'm price gouging, I'm a rascal. But if I'm allowed to do that, I have more of an incentive to invent a cancer cure than if I'm not allowed to do it. I mean, suppose that Harris had won, Kamala Harris had won, and she has this thing about price gouging. And the thing cost me 5 cents to produce, and I can't sell it for more than $1 because if I sold it for $5, I'd be price gouging. Well, what financial incentive do I have to come out with a cure for cancer? Less. But we want people to have more of an incentive to come out with a cure for cancer, not less of an incentive. Look, there are two motivations that people would have to have a cure for cancer. One would be money, make a profit. The other would be benevolence. Well, the benevolence is still there. But what we want to do is mobilize all human motivations to cure cancer or to cure insulin and diabetes and stuff like that. Let me try again. I'm lost. I'm a hiker and I'm lost in the wilderness. And I go, help! very loudly. Price control is like decibel control. And what they're saying is I can only go, help, help. And nobody can hear me when I just whisper help. You see, a high price is a call for help. I mean, that shirt that cost $500, that was a call for help. I mean, when the shirt costs $20, there's no big deal. When it costs $500, that's a cry for help. And when the cancer pill is $1 million, that's a cry for help. And by the way, if it's $1 million, other people are going to start trying to invent the cure for cancer too, so that they can get in on this, right? The higher the price, the more entrepreneurs, the more scientists will try to invent a better cure for cancer. Maybe my cure only cures you for 20 years, but you're going to invent something for 25 years, and somebody will invent something for life. So what I'm trying to say is that when you look at it initially, it sounds horrible. Gouging and profiteering, it just sounds awful. You're taking advantage of people. But if you look at it a little more deeply, the reason that insulin doesn't cost an arm and a leg is because people were allowed to compete and charge whatever they wanted, and then the prices were pushed down toward what the costs were. Because in equilibrium, there are no profits. Now we're never in equilibrium, but we're always tending toward equilibrium. Look, if profit, suppose we have three industries. Industry A, people are making 50% profit. Industry B, they're making 1% profit. And industry C, they're making 20% loss. Well, where are resources going to flow? They're going to flow into industry A, pushing down the profit, and out of industry C, pushing up the profit rate. And I don't know about industry B, I'm not sure about that. But the point is that profits tend to equalize in all areas, assuming away risk differences. And also, they tend towards zero because whenever there's a profit, somebody's going to try to get into that industry and produce it, pushing down prices and pushing down profits. So if you mess around with the system, what you're doing is misallocating resources. So again, I admit it sounds horrible, price gouging. I mean, that's why Harris could get away with this. Say, oh, price gouging is evil. But if you look at it a little bit more carefully and a little bit more in depth, and you have a little bit of economic 101 knowledge, you can see the fallacy of attacking profiteering and price gouging.
Okay. Well, I guess if you don't mind, us continuing with shirt-related thought experiments. Let's say that I want to buy this shirt from a shirt merchant, and this shirt merchant unfortunately has a defect of character in which he is racially prejudiced against people of East Asian descent, so people who like me and who look like me. Um, and he choose not to sell his goods to me. Um, and of course, this is a real life case too, when the Supreme Court decided, I believe, in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, where this small cake maker refused to sell a wedding cake to gay people. So I think, if I remember this details correctly, um, the owner did not strictly have a no gay can do business with us policy. They just refused to sell a gay wedding cake because they do not believe gays can get married, such. Um, so back to my shirt example, I think the common argument is that, well, I could just buy from another shirt merchant or shirt shop. But the my rebuttal would be, well, what if all the shirt manufacturers found or found an association where they collectively decided that no, people like me can do business with them, or they cannot do business with people like me, and that goes into the argument, I think, in most libertarian circles about like how the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the following anti-discrimination laws, whether they can apply to the private sphere as well as the public sphere. I know that Richard Epstein, the eminent libertarian legal scholar, wrote a book on this. He argued that it shouldn't. Discrimination in the private sphere is legal and it's free.
It should be legal.
Yeah, it should be legal. So yeah, tell me. So uh, to what extent can say the prejudice businessman not only can he be free to practice his prejudice in commerce, but also his prejudice help the economy and society.
Right. Well, that's another, what shall I say? Not a softball, a fastball. Another very good criticism of libertarianism, that we libertarians believe that people should have the right to discriminate on any basis that they want: skin color, ethnicity, gender, God knows what, anything. The case of the Colorado cake baker, he was willing to sell cakes to gays. He just didn't want to put two men on the top of the cake, or uh, 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 draw in icing two men. A man and a woman he would have drawn, but two men or two women he wouldn't draw because it was against his religion, because he believed that marriage should be for men and women, not men and not women. But he was willing to sell the cake. Um, he was penalized by the Colorado Supreme Court, but then the U.S. Supreme Court said, well, it's a conflict between the right not to be discriminated and religious freedom. And somehow they picked religious freedom. But this, from a libertarian point of view, was not really kosher. It was not really fully there, because suppose he was an atheist and he just didn't want to put two men on a cake. Uh, should he not have the right to discriminate, or suppose he didn't want to sell any cakes to gays? Or in the case of your shirt, one possibility is they don't want to sell you a shirt at all. Another one is they'll sell you a shirt, but it's double the price for anyone else. Either way, the way you put it, it was absolute discrimination. I'm putting it moderate discrimination. They'll sell you the shirt, you're just going to pay twice as much, or they'll hire you. It's just they're going to pay you half as much as an equally productive person not from your ethnicity. And both are on the table. So it doesn't have to be the extreme case of refusal. It could be doubling or half the wage or whatever. Okay, well, let's take first the case of uh, refusing to deal with you at all. They're not selling you a shirt, and you're going to have to go naked or at least topless because you can't buy a shirt. Well, you're going to be pretty desperate to buy a shirt. And probably they're going to be people from your own ethnicity who will say, hot diggity dog. I'm putting words in their mouth. These white people or these black people, whoever are not East Asians, they refuse to sell us East Asians shirts. And we're pretty desperate because we're going around topless. We need shirts. I'm going to set up a shirt manufacturing plant and I'm going to kick butt. I'm going to profiteer. I'm going to make a ton of money because the East Asians, for some reason, can't get a shirt. They'll be desperate. They'll be willing to pay triple, quadruple the price of a shirt. And I'm going to go into business and take advantage of that. So that's one solution. Another solution is, suppose that no East Asians can make shirts. Don't ask me why they can't make shirts, but they can't make shirts. And now there are blacks and whites who hate East Asians and don't want to give them a shirt. But some of them are doing pretty well. Others are desperate. And they realize that they can make a ton of money by selling a shirt. And they might even do it surreptitiously. So that nobody finds out. They say, "Here, come to the back door and use the servant's entrance. I'll give you a shirt, but you're going to pay 10 times the amount." The point is that these boycotts never work. Why don't these boycotts work? Because there are two sources of the undermining of the boycotts. One, additional people come in. In my case, the other East Asians start up a shirt factory. And then the people who are boycotting start cheating because there's money to be made by cheating. cheating on the agreement not to deal with make shirts. So that would be the solution to the shirt buying or the buying. Now let's take the case of employment. You're just as good as Joe over here. Only Joe over here is white and I'm white. And I don't like East Asians. I mean, I'm obviously that's silly, but I'm playing a role here, obviously. And you're each worth $30 an hour. Your marginal revenue product is $30 an hour. What do I mean by that? I mean that if I have you on my shop floor, my receipts go up by 30 an hour. And both of you 30 an hour. However, you're an East Asian, so I'm going to pay you 15. And this guy, I'll pay 30. In equilibrium, I don't make any profit off my workers. Well, if I'm paying you 15 and you're producing 30, I'm making a $15 profit off of your labor. Somebody's going to come along and offer you 16 because then they can make 14 profit. And then somebody's going to offer you 17 and make 13 profit. And you see where this is going. So the reason that, by the way, the most productive people are Orientals. The next most productive people are whites, and then the blacks are in third place in this sweepstakes. And the wealth of the Orientals is the highest, and the whites are in the middle, and then the blacks are below. And the reason for that is productivity. It's not discrimination, because discrimination keeps getting weeded out of the market. Okay, so much for the economics. Now let's talk about the deontology, the ethics of it. Homosexuals are evil. Why are homosexuals evil? Because they discriminate against half the human race in terms of bed partners and love interests. Namely, they don't want to deal with women. They're evil. Lesbians are evil because they too discriminate against half the human race. They don't want any man in their bed or a husband. They're evil. Heterosexual men are also equally evil because we too, I assume you're hetero, I don't know, but assume you are. We're both heteros, let's say. We discriminate against half the human race, namely fellow men. And the heterosexual women are also equally evil because they discriminate against half the human race also. The only people that don't discriminate against half the human race are bisexuals. Bisexuals will marry a man or a woman or whatever. So we should all become bisexuals? Well, that would be the logical implication of this idea that you have no right to discriminate. But even bisexuals, dirty, rotten bisexuals, they too discriminate. They discriminate on the basis of a sense of humor, or beauty, or strength, or the ordinary things that most people discriminate on the basis of. So even the bisexuals are rotten kids. Namely, where I'm going with this is nonsense. There is no right not to be discriminated against. I like you, but suppose I don't like you and I don't want to deal with you. You have no right that I have to deal with you. The only reason I deal with you is because we've had good conversations in the past, and I look forward to good conversations in the future. But if that ever changed and you asked me to do another interview, I would say no, because I'm not getting as much out of it as the use of time that I could be doing other things. So people discriminate as to who they're going to be friends with. We live in a sea of discrimination. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is anti-libertarian because people have a right to discriminate. But the discrimination is, what shall I say, impervious to really hurt you. Let me give you another example. Men earn more than women on average. Look, there are some women that earn a lot more than men, but on average, for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes around 70 cents. Why is this? Well, the leftists or the economic illiterates would say, well, it's due to discrimination. Men are sort of in charge. Don't ask me how men got in charge, but men are in charge, and we hate women. I tell you, most heterosexual men that I know don't hate women. The very opposite is the case. And we want to push women down. Well, one reason that men earn more than women is men, on average, engage in more dangerous occupations. The occupation of a fisherman or a roofer is more dangerous than if you're sitting in an office in front of a computer. That's one reason. Another reason is what I call the marital asymmetry hypothesis. What's the marital asymmetry hypothesis? Marriage enhances male income and reduces female income. So if you get married, you're paying a price. Why? Because of an economic law of the hell's the economic law? I can't even think of the stupid economic law. Opportunity costs. That's the economic law. Whenever you do anything, you do it at the cost of the next best thing that you could have done otherwise and you can't do. My usual example of this is Yo-Yo Ma and Usain Bolt. Who is Usain Bolt? Usain Bolt is a guy who runs the 100 meters in 9:3. They really ought to give him a speeding ticket. I mean, he's a maniac. Um, and Yo-Yo Ma is the best cellist on the planet. Well, what's Yo-Yo Ma's time in the 100? I don't know. Probably not very good. Probably takes him 20, 25 seconds. I don't know, but he's not good. Why? Because he hardly does stuff that the sprinters do. He doesn't jump, he doesn't run, he doesn't lift weights, whatever sprinters do. How good a cellist is Usain Bolt? I'm not trying to insult him, but I assume he doesn't even play the cello at all. Why not? Because he doesn't practice. Instead, he's on the track. Namely, whenever you do anything, you do it at the cost of not being able to do other things as well or at all. And this is a basic economic principle. Well, what's going on with married men and married women? Women do the lion's share of the housework and the baby care and the breastfeeding, obviously the breastfeeding, but the cooking and the cleaning and the shopping and taking the kids to the dentist and to the doctor and all that. Women do, I don't know, 90% of all that stuff. And there have been sociological studies showing that women do the lion's share of housekeeping and cooking and cleaning and stuff like that. Well, whenever you do anything, you do it at the cost of not being able to do something else as well. If you see, when you have that 30% gap, you're taking all men and all women, and all men make $1 an hour, all women make 70 cents an hour. Fine. But if you bifurcate it based not on single or married, but ever married and never married, you come up with something very different. In my empirical research on this, I was in Canada at the time, and there was this group called Statistics Canada, and I was at the Fraser Institute, and we wanted to get data on ever and never married, and they didn't have it. All they had was single and married. But single could be divorced, widowed, separated, and we didn't want that, and we had to pay them extra, and they didn't much like doing this because they're a bunch of lefties. In any case, what we found that if you take never married, people who are not widowed, not divorced, not separated, not married, nothing to do with marriage, there is no wage gap. None. Well, you never get 1.0. You get 0.99 or 1.03 or something like that, but there's no wage gap. Whereas if you take ever married, that means married, widowed, separated, divorced, then the gap is not 30%. It's more like 50% or 60%. So this is an empirical bit of illustration of the marital asymmetry hypothesis. Namely, the reason women are making less money than men is because a lot of them are married. The ones that have never been married, there's no gap. So that's the statistical thing. But now let's take the economic issue, the praxeological issue. If it were really true that a man and a woman were equally productive and the man was being paid $100 a day and a woman is being paid $70 a day, I would offer the woman 71. You would offer the woman 72. Where is this going to end? It's not going to end with any gap at all. If they have equal productivity, they tend to get the same wage because we have a theory in economics or a thesis or something, a principle, namely wages tend to reflect productivity. And if women and men were equally productive, well, then there'd be no gap. And never marrieds are equally productive. Now, look, 100 years ago, men were more productive than women because the way we cut down a tree was with a saw or a hatchet, and men are stronger than women. And the way we dug a foundation for a building was with a pick and shovel, and men are stronger than women, upper body strength. But nowadays, the way we cut down a tree, we press a button and you get some sort of saw that does it, or the way we dig a hole for a foundation for a building is with a steam shovel. And women can work a steam shovel as well as men. So 100 years ago, yes, then this wouldn't have applied. But nowadays, I mean, there are very few jobs where only men can do it or only women can do it. There are some, but very, very few. So that would be my long-winded, sorry, answer to the discrimination objection to libertarianism.
Okay. Well, I guess you're two for two now. So let's throw you another hardball, fastball answer. You mentioned economic boycott, which is discrimination on the part of the purchaser, the buyer. Um, of course, we mentioned the state of Israel before. I think that this movement has sort of petered out, but for a time, the BDS movement was the rage, boycott, divest, and sanctions. I think you and I both have moral and economic qualms against that movement. But here's the thing, when I talk to conservatives, like mainstream conservatives, about BDS, yes, they would vocally oppose it as they would, but they would not say the same things when it comes to, say, other regimes, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. That's the reason why smoking Cuban cigars, which is a great pastime, is illegal in the US, but not so in Canada. Um, uh, some decades ago, when South Africa practiced their racist apartheid regime, there were strong, there was a strong movement. I think Jimmy Carter's daughter participated in it, where goods coming from South Africa is boycotted. Um, but individually, we do these things too, or at least some of us. There are certain calls to boycott a certain firm because they perform cruel testing on animals, or their owner is again prejudiced, or they do not pay women as much as they pay men, or because they happen to be Elon Musk. I think that is something that there are droves of people leaving X right now because they don't like Elon Musk's views. So I'd like to hear you make I guess, the opposite case for what you've been making so far, that economic boycotts are not only immoral, but they're also bad for the economy.
Well, I don't know that I take that position. I think we all have a right to boycott everyone. Um, Now, look, I don't favor BDS because I don't favor boycotting against Israel because I favor Israel.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if people wanted to boycott Iran, I might even join them because I'm not a big fan of Iran. I was a big fan of Iran. By the way, Iran was the second country to recognize Israel in 1948. So for many years under the Shah, the Iranian people and the Hebrew people were sort of buddies. But it's the new Ayatollah types that are viciously opposed to Israel. But look, again, I'm a heterosexual. I'm boycotting all men when it comes to choosing a bed partner or a marriage partner or somebody like that. There's nothing wrong with a boycott. A boycott is just a refusal to deal with, or sometimes a willingness to deal with, but only if you charge more or pay less or something like that. That would be a sort of a moderate boycott. So I think that from a ethical, deontological point of view, there's nothing wrong with a boycott. And my example of the bisexuals sort of answers that. Now, the separate question of economics, the positive issue as opposed to the normative issue, is how successful are they? And my answer is not very, because there used to be, I think, what is it, a Greek myth. There were two gods fighting, and one god was the son of Mother Earth. So whenever his opponent knocked him down, Mother Earth would push him back up stronger. Well, who's going to win that? Who's going to win that fight? Uh, uh, the point is that whenever there's a boycott, uh, people have a competitive advantage, like we talked about with the shirts. If we're boycotting East Asians about shirts, somebody's going to come. The boycott is subjected to two underminings. One, outside people come in and do the deal with the South Africa, and the other is if a lot of people start boycotting South Africa over apartheid, well, then the South African products are cheaper. And when they're really very cheap, then especially poor people are going to say, hey, look, I don't like apartheid in South Africa, but I could buy the South African car for half the price of the other car, and the South African car is just as good, so I'm going to buy a South African car. And so boycotts are subject to two of these underminings. And that's just the economic point of view. Uh, uh, Sometimes they work. I think maybe the boycott did do something in South Africa. I'm not sure. There's a debate over how successful they are. But I'm just saying that they're not as successful as a lot of people think because of these two underminings. But back to the deontology, back to the ethics of it, nothing wrong with boycotting. It depends on who you're boycotting. Now, the BDS are boycotting the good guys. But if there were a boycott against Iran, and I don't regard Iran as a good guy now, I regard Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah and Houthis and Hamas, as the bad guys. So I might join that, but it would be more symbolic because I don't think it would really do much. I think the best way to stop those guys is for Israel to bomb the Iranian nuclear facilities and bomb their oil fields and bomb them back into the Stone Age if they keep sending their proxies to do mischief in Israel.
Okay. Well, I think this we can end with one more example, but of course, I'm open to more conversations with you in the future. Um, so I think one thing that conservatives and libertarians, I'm talking mainstream conservatives and mainstream libertarians, disagree on amongst many is whether abortion should be legally sanctioned. Now, for conservatives, the answer would obviously be no, and I think for mainstream libertarians, the answer would be yes. Although Ron Paul, as you mentioned, he has a background as a gynecologist, and he is stridently, anti-abortion. So I think this is where my challenge to you being that what is the economic benefit or even the ethical legitimation of, say, a Planned Parenthood abortion provider?
Well, the general public is divided roughly half and half,
Yeah.
or 51-49, and I'm not sure which one is 51 and which one is 49 between pro-life and pro-choice. Even libertarians are divided, maybe halfy-halfy. Ron Paul is pro-life, Murray Rothbard is pro-choice. You can't get two better libertarians than Murray Rothbard and Ron Paul, and yet they're 180 degrees apart. And happily, my theory, evictionism, shows that they're both wrong. And so what is evictionism? I have a whole book on that and many, many articles on it. So I'm happy to talk about that a little bit. I say that evictionism is a principled compromise between the two theories, pro-life and pro-choice. What do I mean by a principled compromise? Well, if you say 2 + 2 is 7, and I say 2 + 2 is 9, and somebody comes along and says 2 + 2 is 8, that's a compromise. But it's not a principled compromise, because a principled compromise is not only true and a compromise, but it also has to be true. And yet we have no reason to think that 2 plus 2 is 8, except that it's a compromise between 7 and 9. So what is evictionism? What evictionism is the claim that you have a right to evict the fetus at any time you want, but never to kill the fetus. Whereas the pro-life people say you can't evict until 9 months are up, and you certainly can't kill. Whereas the pro-choice people say you can evict anytime you want, and you can also kill. So what we have is two different things: evicting and killing. And the pro-life people say you can't do either, and the pro-choice people say you can do both. And I say you can do one but not the other. So it's a compromise. But is it a principled compromise? Yes, I say it's a principled compromise. Why? Take the case of rape. A girl, 12 years old, walking down the street, she gets grabbed, she gets raped, she gets impregnated, and now there is a person inside of her, a very small person. And I believe that peoplehood or personhood starts with the fertilized egg, because the sperm alone will not become a human being, the egg alone will not become a human being, but the fertilized egg will become a human being. By the way, do you know in the Jewish tradition when the fetus becomes viable? When it graduates medical school? Just a little silly joke to lighten things up. It's not really the theory. Actually, the theory in the Talmud is that when the heart starts beating. But I reject that. Why do I reject that? Because, look, I'm having open heart surgery. And first they take the heart out of me, and now I've got no heart. And you come and you shoot me in the head. Did you just shoot a dead body, or did you shoot a live person? And by the way, I'm being kept alive because the machines are keeping the blood. You're a murderer if you shoot me when I have no heart. So heartbeat, smartbeat. The heartbeat is irrelevant. Life begins with the fertilized egg, not with the heartbeat, not when you graduate medical school. Okay, so now there's this 12-year-old girl, and she's got this person inside of her. This person is innocent. It's a baby. It's a two-stage fertilized egg. But it's a trespasser because she's the owner of her own body. So what do you have the right to do with trespassers? Well, you have a right to evict them. Do you have a right to kill them? No, because they're innocent. I mean, the baby is innocent. The father, the rapist, was the bad guy. The baby is totally innocent. You can't get more innocent than a fertilized egg or a fetus of a week old. So she has a right to evict, but not to kill. Now, it just so happens that with present medical technology, that if she evicts in the first 2 trimesters, first 6 months, the baby will die. On the other hand, if she evicts in the last trimester, say in the 8th month, the baby is viable outside the womb. So each pro-life and pro-choice gets, well, not half a loaf, but one gets 2/3 a loaf and one gets 1/3 of a loaf. And as medical technology moves along, that proportion will change. Namely, evictionism is very much like pro-choice in the first 2 trimesters. The baby dies. But in the 3rd trimester, it's very much like pro-life. The baby lives. It's true the baby doesn't live inside this 12-year-old girl anymore, but the baby lives outside, maybe in a host mother or in some sort of medical contraption to keep the baby alive. So that is in the 2-minute version of evictionism. Evictionism is a principled compromise between pro-life and pro-choice. It allows both sides to get something. And it is principled because the girl, I won't even call her a woman, she's only 12 years old, she owns her body. And she has a right to say who is inside of her body. Okay, so much for the case of rape. Now, happily, most abortions are not due to rape, maybe 1 or 2%. Most of them are due to voluntary sexual intercourse. And the argument is, well, look, a woman engages in sexual intercourse, even if she uses all the protections in the world, knows full well that she could get pregnant. And let's stipulate that that's true. And therefore, she's inviting the baby into her. And if she invites the baby into her, she's got to keep it for 9 months. Look, if I invite you for dinner and then now it's 10 o'clock and I start hinting you should leave, you say, well, I'm staying for 9 months. Forget about it. That's not right. So even if there was an invitation, why should it be for 9 months? But secondly, it wasn't an invitation because for an invitation to occur, there has to be an invitor, the woman, and an invitee. But we just got finished saying that the baby doesn't come into being until the egg is fertilized. But at the time of intercourse, the sperm takes its own sweet time to get to the egg, between an hour and 10 hours or 20 hours or something. I'm not sure how long it takes. But at the time of intercourse, there is no invitee, that is the fetus. So I would say that whether it's rape or voluntary sexual intercourse, evictionism is the proper libertarian answer to the quarrel, the debate between pro-life and pro-choice, and that Murray Rothbard and Ron Paul and every other libertarian that doesn't uphold the evictionist theory is wrong. It is not uh, correctly deducing from the libertarian principles of self-ownership and the non-aggression principle.
Okay. Well, I think that opens the door for me to find out more about evictionism. So I very much appreciate you planting that seed into me. Uh, well,
So to speak.
poor, 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 poor choice of words. Yeah, but so, okay. Well, there'll be more to come from Walter Block, but until then, thank you very much for joining the show.
And thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure.
And I promise not to boycott you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.